by Riverside.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into a brand new episode of the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Codd, riding solo with you this week. Hopefully we get Vince back on air after these back-to-back episodes post pre-Martinsville and then post-Martinsville. But folks, it's going to be a fun episode tonight. We're kind of in a part 2 episode coming through the Martinsville race weekend. Part 1 was on Sunday, already. And then part 2 will be tonight. Both episodes will be available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music, our 3 premier subscriptions. And then, of course, you can follow us now on our YouTube app at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Follow us on that as well. Feel free to follow us on Facebook, the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. We have a lot of fan interactions and all that good stuff. And then, of course, follow us on TikTok. We are now on TikTok, and it is at the Broken Wheel Bearing Pod. Yes, that's right. At the Broken Wheel Bearing Pod. I think I said this at the last episode at Martinsville. Not really a big fan of it, but you know what? Hey, we're having fun with it, getting used to it. So multiple platforms, multiple streams to follow us and support us on the podcast. So like I said, loaded show on tap to close out this part 2 of Martinsville. Round of 8 officially over here in the NASCAR 2024 season. Damn shame. We've been looking forward to that race weekend down in Martinsville for such a long time, and it now is officially in the books. Sponsorship updates, a few of them coming in or after Martinsville from our previous episode, and then of course going into our Phoenix race weekend, we'll share those with you. And then of course we have a lot to discuss with Martinsville at the Cup race level. We had a driver. Unfortunately, I was wrong, but we had a driver with his back against the wall. Comes up big in a big-time opportunity. We're going to talk about that. And then, of course, didn't end without controversy in the round of 8. We will be discussing everything that got impacted coming out of Martinsville as we head into Phoenix. Show predictions at Phoenix. We'll follow everything up on tonight's episode of the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. But, man, let's kick things off with some show announcements / kind of what happened down in Martinsville. Show announcements. We are coming up to the end of the regular season, or the end of the 2024 season, not regular. Like we did back in 2023, and I thought this was very successful. It kept the topics fresh. It kept us stretched from when the checker flag dropped in Phoenix all the way to when the green flag dropped at the Busch Light Clash at Los Angeles this past season. Coming up in the off season, what we're going to end up doing is our episodes are going to look like this. We're going to have tonight's episode to finish out Martinsville. We'll be back on air again on Tuesday. Unfortunately, we were supposed to record last night, but due to travel, I had to travel from North Carolina up to Pennsylvania. By the time I got back into PA, I was unable to get on the mic with all of you. So what we're going to end up doing, like I said, we're going to have our next episode after tonight, Tuesday after Phoenix. And then from that point on, we will be doing a bi-weekly episode. So instead of going every single week with all of you, we're going to do a bi-weekly episode. Hopefully that will stretch us from when the checker flag drops at Phoenix to getting us to the green flag at Bowman Gray Stadium. We did this last year. We felt like it was a good opportunity for us to stay with you and connected, but also an opportunity to keep all the topics fresh. We're working on some off-season topics, so I'm super excited to get those written down and jotted down for all of you to join us this off-season talking NASCAR. I love the sport. Love continuing talking about it. Like I said, we got those topics ready to rock and roll. Hopefully I get them finalized so you can be joining us, every other week throughout the off season. And of course, if you follow us on, if you follow us on Facebook at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, what we will end up doing is we will post those episode dates and topics before we go on air. So hopefully a topic comes up. Damn, you see us talk about it. Come join us. Again, we're on YouTube now. We got the live stream going. We got the YouTube live chat up and on air so we can continue discussing everything with you. So, show announcement this week, like I said, we will be going into a bi-weekly podcast episodes starting next week after next week's episode. So, you guys heard me talk about it. Unfortunately, we were supposed to be on air last night. I had to travel back up from North Carolina to Pennsylvania, and unfortunately was unable to get on air to talk about what an amazing race weekend it was in Martinsville with all of y'all. Man, we're at the end of the season now. I mean, we have 312 laps left in the 2024 chapter of NASCAR. And being down in Martinsville on Sunday to me was absolutely incredible. We met some incredible people down there, incredible fans of ours, incredible fans of NASCAR in general. And it was such a welcoming environment for us. I know I did the live episode. I did the live show in the parking lot. I don't think even in the live episode you guys saw how interactive people were. It was such a blast to be down in Martinsville. Beautiful weather, beautiful. I want to say it was probably close to 70 degrees. The leaves were changing, and we just got this absolute beautiful of a performance race at the Xfinity 500. I remember walking out of the race on Sunday, and I was like, you know what? I just have to take in the moment. The race ended. We got to our car, ended up lighting a cigar, and I just looked at the track with the lights on, and I just sat there and I was like, this is just surreal. This is it. Again, we are 312 laps away from the 2024 chapter of NASCAR being written. And looking at that track, and everyone who has followed us from the start, you all know how critical it is for me to do the shows on the road. I enjoy getting involved with the fans. I enjoy having the shows live to hear the interactions, to hear what's going on, hear the noise and how the excitement, right? And this past year, we on this podcast had a very successful 2024 season. I would say we had an extremely successful 2024 season. We went to the Daytona 500. We went to the Goodyear 400, at Darlington. Then we went to Pocono. I forget what they call the Great American Outdoors Experience. I think it was 400, but we went to Pocono, of course, our home track, and then we were at the Xfinity 500 at Martinsville. And I really never took it in like I did at Martinsville because I said, well, we have another week. There's another week of racing. There's another week of racing. Another week of racing. There's another opportunity for me to go to a racetrack. Another opportunity. And then we got to Martinsville, and I'm like, felt like the same old. We got another race to go to. Another race in this season. And like I said, when the lights were shining on the track, the round of 8 was officially closed. I lit that cigar, and I basically said, damn, that's it. That is absolutely it. But Martinsville, you all completely brought it. It was so much fun. Like I said, we met so many great people down there. We absolutely had some great interactions with some awesome race fans, and you could not ask for a more beautiful scenery. You've heard me talk about it on this podcast. I went down in the March 2018 race when Clint Boyer won, and beautiful day when it ran on Monday, but it snowed, and it was freezing cold. The other thing, too, and you've heard me justify Martinsville having 2 dates on this podcast a lot. There is a massive, massive difference in Martinsville in the spring compared to Martinsville in the fall. Look what's on the line in the fall. Elimination cutoff race, round of 8, or going into the round of 4. You got to punch your ticket if you want at that track if you want to win a championship. In the spring, we're usually running it. We ran it for a while in late March. we started running it about probably the second weekend in April. The first time we're at Martinsville, the season is such a baby. It's almost an infant at that point. If you don't have the car to win, what do? Well, go out there, give it your best shot, don't get in trouble, collect points. Whatever way we can get points, just collect them, pack up, we move on. Martinsville, being at that track again on Sunday. Now it's my second race I've attended there. I have to say this. They continuously deserve to have 2 dates. They continuously deserve to have 2 dates. And the reason why is because, yes, the sprint race may not be as exciting, but there's a lot of strategy in that race. A ton of strategy, especially this past year with the tire, and then you had Chase Elliott and William Byron, the Hendrick 40. Last year in 2023, Kyle Larson won the race, but what was the big storyline? Was Logano on the tires, ended up taking 2 tires. It was all about the tires. Totally different race. Different strategy. In the fall, though, that is the most picture perfect race to have before we get to the championship race. Leaving it on the line to punch your ticket for a championship. That's what Martinsville in the fall is all about. I think the NASCAR playoffs, I look back at the round of 8 now that we're, out of them. And I have to give credit where credit's due. I mean, NASCAR did an absolute outstanding job, I want to say, the last 3 years since this car came into play. That round of 8 has been absolutely remarkable. You got Las Vegas. This car is really good at 1.5s. It gives you a good, exciting race like it did this past year. Little strategy race. Logano ends up winning. Year before, Kyle Larson ends up winning. Strategy race, best car, goes out there. The car dominates. Okay. And then, of course, in 2022, you have Logano again. Strategy and the better car prevailed. Homestead. I look at Homestead the last 3 years. 2024, Tyler Reddick. Walk-off win at Homestead. Incredible job. Great ending to the race. 2023, same thing. We had a final restart with 20-something laps to go. Christopher Bell prevails. And then in 2022, Kyle Larson completely goes down there and completely dominates. So you have seen a lot of different styles of racing at these 3 tracks in the round of 8. Martinsville. Finally, Martinsville as the elimination race since 2022. Well, we had 2022. We had a walk-off win, and walk-off win. Bell was below the cut line. Blenny was below the cut line. Blenny was below the cut line again this week. Absolutely remarkable racing we have seen at these 3 tracks in the round of 8 over the last 3 years. And we can debate how the car sucks. We can debate how, every track doesn't look great and all that type of stuff, and it's not a great product. Oh, NASCAR's dead. NASCAR died when Dale. Enough. The last 3 years have been absolutely incredible with this next-gen car in the round of 8. I'm not saying the car isn't flawed. It absolutely is. But it's weird how that switch has happened when NASCAR needs the drama. It needs the storyline. This car that we've had so many issues with over the last 3 years in the round of 8 at those 3 tracks have been absolute drama. It's been good racing. Again, folks, Martinsville in the fall as the elimination race is NASCAR's gift to the fans. And for everyone, when we listen, we're going to have this topic going into the spring next year when we get to Martinsville in the spring. We're going to leave Martinsville and we're going to sit there and probably have people complaining that Martinsville is not good. And I'm going to leave you like this, and I'll continue saying what I did back in April, and I'll continue saying, I'll tell you again what I said, and I will continue saying it next year. Martinsville in the spring is a totally different strategy and a totally different race than in the fall. And like I said, at the end of that race on Sunday, I lit that cigar and I got to stare at a quiet track with the lights on. And it was just so surreal. Thanks again, Martinsville. And thank you again to the fans. You welcomed our podcast down there. You absolutely were so much fun. I had such a great time with all of you. We'll have a show announcement next week in regards to our podcast. Probably going to be doing something interesting this over the off season as well with these live episodes. So stay tuned for that. And then our 2025 shows on the road slate have not been solidified. The only thing that has been solidified for us is Pocono. We will be back at the Tricky Triangle. That is our home track up in Pennsylvania. We will 1000% be there probably every year until the day I die. I love going to that track, and I'm hoping to see more of you, the fans, with us next year. We're hoping our tailgate gets a little bit bigger and bigger. So Pocono's solidified for us. Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast will be back up there. The remaining tracks in 2025 for shows on the road, we're still working out some kinks. We're working out some details. Again, I have a great crew with me, and the one thing I want to do is thank all of them for being there for us the whole entire 2024 season. I know we still have Phoenix left, but I really want to say this. And the other thing that was really surreal for me is, like I said, I lit that cigar looking at a dead track or a quiet track with the lights on. And, we had a lot of people I don't think understand this or know this. My dad actually goes to all the races with me. And he does such a great job. He's not the most technological sound. He's tech savvy. I mean, I wouldn't say tech savvy. He has common sense on technology, and he does such a great job with the promotions. And this past week, like I said, we had people coming up to our where I was recording on the podcast. He was taking the questions and answers, so no one disrupted me while I was on air. Which you were all more than welcome to do that, by the way. But I got to give a shout out to my father, who really has been one of the bigger supporters of this podcast over the last 2 years. He's been at every single race with me in regards to supporting the podcast, promotions, whether that's recordings. I'll tell a funny story before we really get into the meat and potatoes of tonight. My father, we went down to the Daytona 500 back in February. And he was up there, and as everyone was aware, the Daytona 500 did not have the best weather that whole weekend. So we set up shop on that Friday in the parking lot. And I was having trouble kind of like getting the flags, our show flags, basically, stuck on like the table and all. He was out there, he was doing all of that. But then on top of it, not just was he doing that, he went up to the track attend or the track attend or track support, excuse me. And he asked them, he's like, what's going to happen with the ARCA series? What's going to happen with all these different types of series, because of the rain coming in? And, he was so excited to get that information that he wanted to get it to me. Because I was recording at the time just to get that on air. So, like I said, my father has really, really, and this is not a love affair or anything like that, but he's done an outstanding job in regards to support of being there for me with this show. So I got to give him a very, very special clap this week. I got to really give him like the credit where the credit's due. There we go. Clap to Jack Hot. Real thank you there for everything you've done this whole entire season. Again, he helped me out with the tailgate. He's helped me out with everything. So a little shout out there for him. So, all right. Again, our 2025 shows on the road have not been announced yet, and I'm hoping to get them to you probably not next week's show, not the following episode, but hopefully about mid-December. So hopefully you can join us while we're on air. All right, a couple of jski.com fast headliner sponsorship updates. Again, courtesy of jski.com. Follow them on X by web at www.jski.com, or if you have Facebook, on Facebook. Headliner number one this week. Team Amerivet enters a Phoenix Cup race with Jeb Burton as the driver. Team Amerivet. This is the team that's going to be running about 17 races next year. We're going to see them out at Phoenix this week with Jeb Burton. Headliner number 2, excuse me. Jeff McDuffie ended up passing away in his sleep unexpectedly on October 25th, 2024. Jeffrey McDuffie Sr. is the son of the late J.D. McDuffie. So J.D. McDuffie's son, Jeff McDuffie, ended up passing away in his sleep unexpectedly on October 25th, 2024. And then the final fast headliner / sponsorship update of the week, and that is going to go to Martin Truex Jr. He will be running a 2004 throwback scheme at Phoenix for his final Cup race in his final full-time season in NASCAR. So, listen, I've seen the picture of this. I'm definitely going to post it on our Facebook page, Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Brings back a lot of memories from myself. It's the actual paint scheme that he ran in his debut race with DEI back in October 31st, 2004 at Atlanta Motor Speedway. So really cool look. That's a storyline that I kind of feel like I kind of glossed over all season long. Martin Truex Jr. retiring. His last race is this week at Phoenix. So damn shame. Great driver. Hopefully, maybe he goes out on top this week at Phoenix. We saw a driver not in the playoffs or the championship for last year win the race in Ross Chastain. So maybe this might be the year we see it again. So, again, those were our fast headliner sponsorship updates, all courtesy of jski.com. Follow them on X, Facebook, or by web at www.jski.com. So, our part 1 episode, we're going to take the green flag now out on the Martinsville race in general. Not my experience, but the race in general. And so on Sunday's episode, our part 1 episode of the Martinsville race weekend, I ended up discussing already the truck series and the Xfinity series. We've had some great chatter interactions with our live stream chat with our fans about both those races. So, to mention, Eric Almirola won the Xfinity race on Saturday. We had Christian Eckes win the truck race on Friday night. So, but on Sunday, we had the Cup Series, and they were racing the Xfinity 500 in order to punch their ticket into Phoenix. So, Ryan Blaney came away with this win on Sunday, and if you listen, and we'll have both those episodes up on Spotify, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio for your viewer listenership, unless you've already seen it on YouTube. On Sunday, I ended up whipping out the flag. I really, really felt that it was Chase Elliott that was going to win this race. I really did. I came close, but no cigar, right? Came close, but no cigar. I did say that I was like, Chase Elliott, I really like the pick. I feel like Chase Elliott, this is his time to shine, back against the wall. He's going to go down to Martinsville, do what he did in 2020, and go out there and win this race. Now, we had a driver that had his back against the wall in the 2024 playoffs, go down to Martinsville, and end up winning this race. And that was the driver of the 12, Ryan Blaney. One thing I will say about this, you've heard me the last couple weeks talk about Ryan Blaney as a driver. After Vegas, he had an average finish throughout the playoffs at 18.8. Coming out of Homestead, he had an average finish of 16.75. But the one thing I will say about Ryan Blaney that I really, really appreciated and liked in the round of 8 was this. One, he was caught up in the BS at Vegas. Ended up getting involved with the spin. Just completely, totally collapsed at Vegas. Following week, he goes to Homestead. Ends up finishing second behind Tyler Reddick, who ends up pulling a, buzzer beater of a pass at the end of that race. So Ryan Blaney, to me, the last couple of weeks, even though his playoffs were not good, like I said, 18.8 average finish coming out of Vegas, 16.75 average finish coming out of Homestead, you kind of felt like the momentum was coming on the 12th side. Similar to Chase Elliott. why I was high on Chase Elliott. You throw all the stats out the window. What he did at Homestead the week before was great. I felt like he could get it done at Martinsville. But Ryan Blaney did get it done at Martinsville. And he clinched his playoff ticket for the second straight, or championship 4 ticket, for the second straight year after winning Martinsville. And I think what's really, really interesting to me, first, Ryan Blaney ended up finishing stage 1 in 5th, finished stage 2 in 2nd, and led only a total of 32 laps. But the one thing that was really interesting, as I was sitting in the stands, I was watching the 12 car the whole entire time. And he qualified 14th. So it's not like he really had a good starting position in this race. He was close to mid-pack. But what I saw from the 12 car was a driver with a piece of equipment that got better and better and better, especially as the track was cooling off. The last sequence, right? Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, they both ended up pitting on the final caution. They both came out. Chase Elliott was in the lead, or Chase Elliott was ahead of Ryan Blaney. Chase Elliott was able to get around, get up into the front. Ryan Blaney was not. But then it just felt like the 12 car just got better and better and better. And eventually, like I said, Kyle Larson, who took off. And Chase Elliott was able to catch up to Kyle Larson to make the pass. But who was right behind Chase Elliott? It was the 12. And they said it on the NBC booth. Now, I rewatched the race via NBC, watching it through NBC, and they kept saying in the last sequence of that race, look out for this 12 car because Ryan Blaney is the fastest car on the track. Like I said, when that sun came down and the track started cooling off, I felt like it was, in regards to Chase Elliott, I felt like it was the race winning move. He had fresh tires, but Ryan Blaney did the same thing. And in a car that continuously throughout the day showed the audience down in Martinsville that he was able to get around and continue pushing forward and not stalling out on these long green flag runs, you knew if he was on fresh set of tire with Chase Elliott, for Chase Elliott, it was a great strategy, but Ryan Blaney's car was better in the long run. Chase Elliott got around Kyle Larson for the lead with 25 laps left. And I'm not going to lie. I was up there cheering and screaming with all the Chase Elliott fans. I was so excited. Why? Because I picked them. As a podcaster of a sport, I love watching greatness. I like watching athletes that have backs against their walls and overcome adversity. And that's how I felt with Chase Elliott. But then eventually Chase's car, he didn't really put up a fight. Blaney got around and Blaney ended up taking off. And Ryan Blaney ended up winning this race. And as I was walking out of the track, I was bummed about Chase Elliott. But then I looked at it and I sat there and I was like, you know what? God damn it. Ryan Blaney was in a similar spot. He went into Martinsville, below the cut line, like Chase Elliott, ends up prevailing, overcoming adversity, a worse starting spot than Chase Elliott, started 14th, and got better as the day went on. What's the saying? It's not how you start, it's how you finish. Ryan Blaney was able to finish this race and end up clinching himself into Phoenix in the championship 4. Now, going back to a previous point, the one thing I really like about Ryan Blaney in this championship 4, he was the champion in 2023. The last time we saw a NASCAR back-to-back champion in the Cup Series, not the Xfinity Series, but in the Cup Series, was Jimmie Johnson. Will we be able to see Ryan Blaney do what Jimmie Johnson has done in the past? And the one thing that really kind of triggered another question that came out of Martinsville with me, Ryan Blaney ended up winning this championship in 2023. And for me, it was like, you know what? Well-earned championship. Maybe, I don't know how many more championships Ryan Blaney's going to win, all that good stuff. But for me now, I'm looking at it with him punching his ticket to Phoenix for a chance to win the championship. Was the 2023 championship for Ryan Blaney the seal that needed to be broken in order for him to dominate the sport? All it takes is for a driver to get one, and then all of a sudden they get hot, and then they get moving forward, and they get all these wins and championships. Ryan Blaney's 30 years old. He'll be 31 to start of next year. Or excuse me, he'll be 31 at the end of this year. Or no, I'm sorry, you're right, 31 next year. My bad. Sorry. Ryan Blaney is just hitting his prime now. In one of the best with one of the best teams in NASCAR. I'm going to start thinking, like I said, I started thinking about it. I said, I think really last year's championship in 2023 is going to break the seal for Ryan Blaney to go on this. Now, I'm not saying he's going to go out to be 7-time champion like Jimmy Johnson. I'm not saying that at all. But won the championship last year. He's got a really good opportunity to win it again this year. He is really, really good at Phoenix. And we'll be discussing Phoenix a little bit later in this episode. Chase Elliott, though, yeah, absolute heartbreak for my Elliott fans, especially for me who picked him. Absolute heartbreak for Chase Elliott. He ended up leading a total of 129 laps. Won stage one, didn't collect any stage points in stage two. Stupid strategy, stupid mistake on pit road. Stupid mistake on pit road with the tires. Felt like the tire wasn't tight enough, ended up staying in the stall. He gets out. Kind of disrupted his rhythm a little bit, but then all of a sudden, the late race strategy, caution comes out to the better advantage of the 9. The 9 gets fresh tires. He gets up into the front of the pack. He ended up getting the lead with 25 laps to go, unable to hold off Ryan Blaney. Blaney gets around him, of course, the rest is history. The interesting thing for me with Chase Elliott, and I've talked to a couple of my Chase Elliott fans who, listen, I've been on this show, and I have said this about Chase Elliott. I have felt that Chase Elliott has not been the same since the snowboarding incident. But then I heard him talk on the Dale Jr. download earlier this year, and he said, yeah, everyone points to the snowboarding. But in reality, I have not really gotten comfortable in this next-gen car. And it raised questions because in the first year, he won those, 5 races in 2022? Technically 4 because, disqualifications to Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin ends up giving the Pocono win. But the one thing that the 9 team has showed me in the playoffs, and we all knew that one win wasn't going to get it done. Yeah, he could have gotten it done at Martinsville. He could have won the race, and I would have felt a lot more better with him going to Phoenix. But the point is that one win wasn't going to get it done. But the one thing I saw at the end of this playoff run with the 9 is that I think we're starting to see Chase Elliott get comfortable with this car. Remember this. Chase Elliott is a very, very slow learner. And I say that politely in regards to, think about it when he became a rookie in 2016. Yeah, he made the playoffs. Yeah, he was a top 5, top 10 car. But the one thing about Chase Elliott is that it took him nearly 2 years, 2.5 years to capture his first win. And I understand it's frustrating as a Chase Elliott fan, or for our Chase Elliott fans that are like, listen, that first year in that next gen car, he had 5 wins. Where did that go? Well, here's the one thing that he lost too: his ability to outbeat people in the corners at road courses. But I'm starting to see Chase Elliott as we exit 2024 starting to realize that, maybe he's starting to come around on this car, and maybe 2025 is going to be better for Chase Elliott. One win wasn't going to get it done. But the one thing I did see at the end of this playoff run is that he was leading laps, and good portions, not because of strategies and all that type of stuff. He was leading a good amount of laps. He ended up winning a stage at Martinsville, which is not a surprise to anybody. And I think him and AG are finally starting to get rhythm in this car. So if you're a Chase Elliott fan, I would feel very optimistic going into 2025. So he got eliminated after Martinsville. Now, other drivers I got eliminated. Let's talk about Kyle Larson. Okay, so this one I was really excited to talk about with my Larson fans. And I I am I'm going to start off by saying this. I am just as disappointed that Kyle Larson's not part of our championship four, just as much as anybody that's listening to me or any fan. Kyle Larson completely had a phenomenal season. A phenomenal season. And yes, at times it did get records or checkers. It did, but that's the Kyle Larson driving experience. If you're a fan of him, that's what you're getting. He's either going to win the race or he's going to wreck out of the race. It's definitely difficult to have a driver that talented with that many wins in the 2024 Cup Series season, not in the championship four, but that's how the system's set up. And listen, the system is amazing. The system is absolutely amazing. I love the playoff system. I would never get rid of it. It's just like any other sport. Sometimes the number one seed doesn't always win the championship. It just doesn't. For me, Kyle Larson, I think, blew it last week more so at Homestead than this week at Martinsville. First of all, I think Kyle Larson had a fantastic race at Martinsville this week. Ended up finishing third. Ended up finishing sixth in stage one. Finished fourth in stage two. Led 71 laps. And yeah, his tires started going down, so he had to let Chase Elliott go. But Kyle Larson is the reason why Kyle Larson's not in the championship four. His impatience at Homestead last week to get around Ryan Blaney, his impatience to get around Ryan Blaney at the end of that race and screwed himself between him and Austin Dillon. He also had a very awkward race at Las Vegas, which is not a Kyle Larson-esque race at that track. I can't blame him so much on Vegas. I can blame him at Homestead. If he just stays patient in those closing laps, he had the better car than Ryan Blaney. He probably gets around Ryan Blaney and ends up winning the race. Now, I've also had fans sit there and tell me, well, man, he missed Charlotte, he missed the Coke 600 and all that type of... Listen, him missing the Coke 600, look how far he got even missing the Coke 600. Vince and I talk about it all the time. That race is 4 stages. He's really good there, by the way. That race is 4 stages. He missed the most point totaled race of the season. And because of an error at Homestead and a miscalculation at Vegas, he misses the championship four by like 8 points. He missed a total race, folks. Yeah, we can always point to Charlotte, but let's take Charlotte out of it. He was going to miss Charlotte no matter what, with the experience and the opportunity he had at Indy. Yes, he wanted to race both of them. But as soon as the weather hit, we all kind of figured that that's it, he's done. For me, it's what Kyle Larson did in this postseason that I'm starting to blame. It's not Charlotte back in May. Yeah, would the Charlotte race help him? Sure, absolutely. Probably wins a stage. Probably wins everything. Probably wins the race. I don't know. The point is that shoulda, woulda, coulda. He was, as soon as the weather happened, he wasn't coming. He tried his damn. He couldn't get there. But it's what he did in the playoffs. Homestead, again, his impatience to get around Ryan Blaney cost him that win. He probably had Blaney in about 4 laps. Again, Vegas, a very awkward Kyle Larson race out there. Our guy, Try Oval Life, he said it. He's like, if Larson doesn't have an issue, then he wins this race. That's what's causing him not to win races. Again, I'm disappointed that we don't have Kyle Larson in the championship four, but I have to give credit where credit's due. The other guys survived. Unfortunately, he did not. And again, for the folks that are complaining about the playoff system, again, number one seeds in other sports do not always make the championship. We just saw it in the NFL this past year with the Baltimore Ravens. Denny Hamlin. We're going to talk about Hamlin coming out of Martinsville. In regards to this one, Denny Hamlin, to me, I am starting to get to the point that we may actually see him probably win a championship as an owner before we'll ever see him win a championship as a driver. comes up short again in the round of 8. I don't know what it is about Denny Hamlin in the playoffs. I just don't get it. One of the most talented drivers in the sport will not be a champion as a driver. The worst part is that Denny called his shot after Dover. They were going to win the championship. And he falls short. Another driver last week at Homestead. I mean, I don't think he had the speed to maintain with Tyler Reddick and Ryan Blaney late in that race. But the one thing that is just like I keep looking back in my head, and as I was driving through North Carolina with my dad, driving back from Martinsville, I'm sitting there thinking in my head, I'm like, he's going to win a championship as an owner before he ever wins one as a driver at this point. It's a good possibility next week at Phoenix. Joey Logano, he ended up showing up this week at Martinsville. Started 12th, finished the race in 10th, ended up finishing 9th in stage 1. Was really just a bottom top 10 car the whole entire race. Nothing special, nothing ventured, nothing gained. We kind of figured that him and Reddick were probably going to be on the back burner as they were heading to Phoenix. They really had nothing nothing left to prove. Reddick, speaking of him, we absolutely saw him just, he had a brake issue, ended up DNFing in this race. Ended up pulling himself behind the pits at lap 458. Again, he started 31st. There was really, for those two guys, it was more on the lines of, let's just get the car rolling to Phoenix next week. Now, here's the real controversy, and I left two drivers out specifically to talk about this. Let's start off with number 1, driver of the 24, William Byron. So, William Byron ended up getting enough points to make the championship 4. With Ryan Blaney's win, he was getting close to the cut line. Now, when the checker flag dropped in Martinsville, and I was up in the audience, I was up in the stands, I couldn't see any of this stuff because I was more worried about the battle between Blaney, Elliott, and Larson. The one thing that was really, really interesting was Christopher Bell, when the checker flag dropped, made it to the championship 4 off of points. As the race ended, on the Jumbotron, they showed what Christopher Bell did. And what was that? He pulled a very, very raw Hail Melon. Didn't advance for position. Very raw. But he got around Bubba Wallace. And why was that significant? Because there was enough points to get over into the championship 4. Now, Christopher Bell, at the end of the race, they announced that Christopher Bell violated a rule or a safety violation by pulling the Hail Melon that Ross Chastain made very familiar back after the 2022 season at Martinsville. They put Christopher Bell, the last car, on the lead lap and he ended up finishing 22nd in this race. With that, William Byron ended up staying in position. Byron makes the transfer. Christopher Bell doesn't. So your championship 4 going into Phoenix are Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, and William Byron. But there's a lot of people that are upset with William Byron being in the championship 4. So NASCAR ended up penalizing multiple teams after Martinsville today. Or excuse me, yesterday. So it's actually a good thing that we held off from the live episode until today. So this article is from NASCAR.com. NASCAR issues major penalties to 3 Cup Series teams after Martinsville. All right, so here we go. Follow through. And this is why everyone was upset. NASCAR penalized the number 1, the 3, and the 23 Cup Series teams from member conduct violations during Sunday's race at Martinsville Speedway. After an investigation off the on-track data and team scanners from the final laps of Sunday's round of 8 elimination race, NASCAR determined the actions of those involved violated sections 4.4 B and D. NASCAR member conduct of the rulebook, which include race manipulation and actions detrimental to stock car racing. Drivers Ross Chastain, Austin Dillon, and Bubba Wallace were each hit with a loss of 50 driver points and a $100,000 fine. In addition to this, NASCAR also fined the owners of each team $100,000 and deducted 50 owners' points each. This is where it gets better. Crew chiefs Phil Surgeon, Justin Alexander, and Booty Barker, along with their respective spotters Brandon McReynolds, Brandon Benish, and Freddie Kraft, were all suspended for the 2024 season finale race at Phoenix. Additionally, team executives Tony Launders, Keith Rodden, and Dave Rogers were also suspended for the 2024 finale at Phoenix. In the late stages of last weekend's 500-lap race, William Byron's number 24 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet began to fade from the front of the field, which led to a series of on-track events that eventually resulted in Tuesday's penalties. Every spot lost dropped Byron closer to the elimination line and settled into sixth place on the track, just 1 point ahead of Christopher Bell in the provisional playoff standings and in position to advance into the championship four. Bell was running in 19th at the time the first car 1 lap down. As Blaney pulled away for his championship four clinching win, the Chevrolets of Chastain and Dillon effectively created a blockade behind William Byron, both running side by side and not passing the 24 car over the final 10 laps of the race. Completed passes by those cars may have dropped Byron out of the championship four. Elsewhere on the track, again, this article is all courtesy of NASCAR.com. Elsewhere on the track, Wallace's number 23 Toyota slowed significantly over the final 5 laps, eventually getting lapped by Blaney. On the final lap, Bell surged past the slowing Wallace entering turn 3, slid through the rubber marbles on the track, and rode his car along the outside retaining wall, coming to the checker flag in 18th place. While it initially appeared that Bell would advance to the championship four via tiebreaker, NASCAR reviewed the video in the minutes after the checker flag and determined Bell's move was a safety violation. So, tons to digest right here, right? So, Christopher Bell, we just talked about. He ended up getting hit hard by NASCAR for a safety violation by pulling a Hail Melon move, which is, we all know, is technically illegal. Christopher Bell, at that point, that was his only move to make in order to make it to the championship four. It backfired. It cost them. We finally saw NASCAR basically, they put that rule in place after Chastain made the move. They eventually penalized Bell for it. What's interesting, Bubba Wallace, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of chatter. Even Freddie Kraft came on door bumper clear and basically said he was going down with a flat tire. According to NASCAR, he wasn't. And he kept going, getting slower and slower and slower, eventually getting into the point where Christopher Bell could pass him. Now, the one thing I will say, and yeah, the Toyotas, yeah, they screwed up. It sucks, but again, I mean, Bell's only opportunity was to do what he did. Bubba tried to help him out. Whether it was the tire was getting flat or not, I know that was the major call, and that's what they were saying. But NASCAR clearly felt that that was not the case. The interesting one right here, though, is the Chevrolets of Dillon and Chastain. Okay, so as I was in the stands, I did not, as the laps kept going down and down and down with 10 laps to go, I'm sitting there going to my head, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, that's just good racing. Chastain and Austin Dillon just can't get around each other. You know what? That's just good racing. I didn't realize that they were actually pulling a blockade to protect William Byron. And at the end of the race, I saw the final scoreboard of what the race results were. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, there's also been discussions that, like, well, maybe Ross Chastain couldn't get around Austin Dillon. Maybe Austin Dillon and Chastain could just not get around each other. Well, there is rumors that it was talked on William Byron's radio and scanner, and clearly it is accurate because NASCAR clearly made a decision. But William Byron was saying, doesn't the 1 and the 3 know what the plan is? This is exactly what NASCAR did not need, right? They did not need this publicity stunt. Like I said, now we got all these suspensions, we got these fines, we got these penalties coming out of it. But not just on top of that, You have a team owner now quote tweeting our friends over at Auto Racing Analytics saying that the playoff system needs to die and it needs to be restructured. This is, and listen, I think our playoff system's perfectly fine and it's beautiful and it keeps us entertained. And it's got a ton of drama in it. Each and every single week, the playoff system was designed to do what it has done. Now, the problem I have with this is race manipulation. And I guess my question to the audience tonight, if you're listening on our YouTube live stream and all that type of stuff, yes, this situation happened at Martinsville with the teams kind of manipulating. But what's the difference between what happened on Sunday and what would happen at a restrictor plate race when all the manufacturers are told to work together? I get it. I understand in Martinsville, it's, you're just trying to protect so the driver can advance to the final four. But it's kind of hypocritical that NASCAR's going to pull the this card at, the race manipulation when every single time they're restrictor plate tracks, they all sit there and say the manufacturers are told to work together. I understand that the on-track data, what probably is going to screw Chastain and Dillon and what did was the on-track data. So eyes on the sport, as viewers, we're not understanding, again, it looks like it's hard racing in the stands. NASCAR must have saw something on the on-track data and clearly on the scanners. And I'm going to be honest with you, if that's correct with William Byron, then that's probably what caught him. It's the same thing with Austin Dillon at Richmond. What screwed Austin Dillon at Richmond was his spotter basically saying, wreck him, wreck him, wreck him. So there's a lot of fans right now that are upset, rightfully so, about this because they're like, well, Christopher Bell didn't make the playoffs, and William Byron shouldn't make the playoffs either. If there was a wall brigade around William Byron at the end of this race, then why did he make the playoffs or the championship four? That's a very valid question. Because clearly Dillon and Chastain got penalized for this. And if it was something on the scanner with William Byron saying, don't they know what the plan is? Then yeah, I mean, you know what? The 24 should not be in the championship four. He shouldn't be. We saw Christopher Bell's not in the championship four. Now, granted, it was a safety violation. NASCAR can't. This was the worst thing that could have happened to NASCAR this week. And it's definitely going to come back and bite them in the butt. Now, we have a lot of fans in this sport sitting there saying, well, this is what we're talking about, the playoff system. This is what we're talking about, the playoff system. Listen, it's not the playoff system. Let's not get the playoff system that's currently in place confused with race manipulation. The playoff system did not cause race manipulation. There's been cases of it. There's been situations of it in the playoffs. But that doesn't mean the playoff system forces race manipulation to happen. And what do I mean by that? Well, again, let's use this William Byron example. Yes, Chevrolet could have done this whole manipulation stuff with the 1, the 3, and the 24. But the 1 and the 3 still chose to do it. They could have backed out and said, no, I can't do that. It's against the rules. Whether it's a Chevrolet or not, I can't do it. It's the driver's responsibility for that. Now, granted, there's going to be fans who are going to be, well, Matt, there's going to be consequences by that if they don't do it, right? There's not going to be just a lot of consequences. But at the same time, though, we can't continue justifying everything. At one point, it's human it's still the human thought process. And listen, even if Chastain or Dillon basically said, no, screw you guys, I'm not doing this. Like, I can't do this in good conscience. The manufacturer's not going to pull support. They're not. Because there could be a lot of bad publicity behind it. It's like in 2020 when Eric Jones ended up not passing, I believe, Denny Hamlin at Martinsville. because it was a Toyota race rule. Now, Eric Jones being the good Samaritan's like, you know what, I'll help him out, whatever. Eric Jones was going to Chevrolet. You could have said, no, screw you. And that is Eric Jones' fault. It's just like Chase Elliott in 2021 at Bristol at the night race when Harvick ended up blowing his tire out. Goes back on the track. Where's the 5? Where's Larson? I want to help him out. That should have been a penalty deduction. It should have been. You can't manipulate the results of a race. You just can't. Every situation's different because the data doesn't show it, but clearly in this situation, the data did. So if you're being blatant and obvious, then yeah, that's a problem. But the playoff system did not create this. It did not. We've had race manipulation for years. There's been a lot of cases of this in the past before the playoffs even became existent. But we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about how there was race manipulation in the 70s and the 80s. Ford, Chevrolet, they all do it. The playoff system didn't create it. Again, tons of penalties coming out of Martinsville. So in case you're just tuning in with us on our YouTube live stream, Chastain, Dillon, and Bubba Wallace were all hit hard after Martinsville, both 50 driver point deduction, $100,000 fines. They're all losing their crew chiefs and spotters and then their team executives for the race finale at Phoenix. So again, your final four now, after all of the controversy and all the BS, your final four is William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, and Tyler Reddick. So let's take the green and white checker flag on Martinsville. Again, 2-part episode. This will be up on air, both episodes tonight on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. And of course, let's close out tonight's segment with our final race predictions of 2024. Can't believe it. I can't believe we're already here. But let's start getting into some race predictions at Phoenix. BWB picks this week. Again, this is for the championship. And my pick number, or actually, I guess we're only going to do one pick this week. Let's just do one pick. I'm not giving you a whole rundown of dark horses, all that type of stuff. It comes down to one thing. It comes down to the 4 drivers at Phoenix. Let BWB pick this week for the championship 4. I'm going with the hot hand. Let's do Ryan Blaney. We talked about it a lot on this show. We talked about it a lot in this podcast. You know what? I love myself an athlete that has a back against his wall and faces adversity. Ryan Blaney did it last week at Martinsville. Again, 16.75 average finish coming out of Homestead, going into Martinsville. Below the cut line. Goes down there, passes my pick from last week, Chase Elliott, ends up winning the race at Phoenix. Ryan Blaney is my pick this week to win the 2024 championship. That'll be the first time we see a back-to-back champion in the Cup Series level since Jimmy Johnson did it. But let's talk about the in-depth real quick on why I chose Ryan Blaney. DriverAverages.com at Phoenix, recent races since February of 2021. Ryan Blaney is the best driver at this track since the start of 2021. He's got an average finish of 4.1. He's in 7 races. He's got 6 top 5s, 7 top 10s, and he has led a total of 322 laps at this track in 7 races. His best finish in that stretch, 2nd. His lowest finish in that stretch is 10th. Best finish, 2nd. Lowest finish is 10th. Last year, Ryan Blaney won the championship by not winning this race in Phoenix. This year, Ryan Blaney ends up going to Phoenix, goes out there, and wins this race to give Team Penske another championship and Ryan Blaney's 2nd championship of 2024. So that's right. You heard me best on the BWB podcast, or Broken Wheel Bearing podcast. I'm going with Ryan Blaney as the champion in 2024. If you listen to one of my earlier episodes in the season, or from last offseason, I had Joey Logano winning this race, but not winning the championship. But obviously, since he's in the Final Four, he wins the race, he wins the championship. This year, I switched it up on you. I'm going Ryan Blaney to capture that 2nd championship of his very young career. So With all that being said, let's take out the checker flag on tonight's episode. Post Martinsville, round of 8 is officially in the books. We head to Phoenix, folks. We are finally here at the championship race weekend. We got the Craftsman trucks on Friday night. Super excited to watch that. Hopefully it's not a debacle like it was last year. Then we had the Xfinity Series on Saturday. It's going to be a late green flag start. Super excited to watch that. And then we got our Cup race on Sunday. Again, Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast prediction. My prediction is going to be Ryan Blaney. So, with all that being said, if you love what you're hearing, if you love supporting us, and you love what I bring to the table, same with Vince, follow us on Facebook at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Follow us on YouTube at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, and you have to type it in at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Because if you don't, you get Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast videos of how to change a broken wheel bearing. Maybe in the offseason, I'll tell you guys why I started why I changed, or why this podcast name is that. But follow us on TikTok if you're on TikTok at the Broken Wheel Bearing Pod, and of course follow us on iHeartRadio, Amazon, and Spotify. So, with all that being said, folks, we're finally here. Our checker flag as NASCAR fans is finally here at the end of the 2024 season. 312 laps left in the chapter of 2024 of NASCAR. Continue supporting us. And if you're, at the track, enjoy your race weekend in Phoenix. Should be beautiful weather. And if you're not at Phoenix, well, then enjoy your championship race weekend. If you're throwing a party, having friends over, watching it by yourself, whatever you're doing, have fun, be safe, and we will chat next week after Phoenix and after we see who the 2024 champ is. Have a wonderful night. We'll chat next week. Deuces.
Will you tell Mr. Dennett that Ricky Bobby is my best friend, and it's shaking big time.